The second time my student ID beeped from inside another girl's coat pocket, I did not scream, chase her, or slap my palm over the scanner, like the terrified freshman I used to be. I stood beneath the yellow dormitory light with rain dripping from the ends of my hair, my backpack strap cutting into my shoulder, and watched the glass door stay locked while my roommate's smile broke apart one tiny muscle at a time. The scanner blinked red.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Behind the reception window, the night duty screen showed my face, my name, and a warning I had never seen in my first life because in my first life I had been too busy crying in an office while everyone else decided what kind of liar I was. Invalid access attempt. Card status. Protected. Identity confirmation required. My roommate, Mira, froze so perfectly that for 1 second she looked like one of those campus posters about academic honesty, all polished hair and hollow eyes. Then the curfew alarm chimed softly, not loud enough to wake the whole building, only loud enough to tell the truth. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes before the dorm curfew check locked every entrance record for the night. 2 minutes before the system decided who was inside, who was outside, and who had lied. Mira turned toward me, still holding my old navy lanyard like it belonged to her, and whispered, "Lena, please, just say you lent it to me." In my first life, those words had destroyed me. In this life, they sounded like a door clicking shut from the correct side. I looked past her, through the rain-smeared glass, at the dorm supervisor's office where the lights had already been turned off.
Closed. No appeals. No soft explanations.
No girls being girls. No emergency excuse unless you had already registered one before curfew. Myra's fingers tightened around the card, so hard the plastic bent. I watched her stand outside the closed office alone, wearing the same innocent expression she had once worn while giving a statement that got me suspended from residence housing, removed from the honors list, and nearly kicked out of university. Then I lifted my own real student ID from under my sweater, tapped it against the scanner, and walked inside before midnight without lending anyone my name. I know how it sounds, because before I died the first time, I would have hated a girl like me. I would have called her cold.
Petty.
Cruel. The kind of person who watches a friend drown because she once got splashed. But that was before I learned how many disasters begin with something small enough to fit into a lanyard. My first life did not collapse because of a murder, a cheating scandal, or a dramatic betrayal under chandeliers. It collapsed because of a rectangular piece of plastic with my photo on it, and because I thought kindness meant letting someone borrow the proof that I existed. At Westbridge University, our student IDs were everything. They opened dorm gates, recorded dining hall meals, logged library entries, confirmed attendance in certain lecture halls, unlocked study rooms, checked equipment out of labs, verified curfew, and printed our names on disciplinary reports before anyone asked whether the name matched the hand holding the card. Mine had always been clean. That mattered. I was a scholarship girl from a town where people said university like it was a miracle instead of a place. I ironed my shirts because wrinkles made me nervous. I set alarms before alarms. I had a color-coded binder for orientation week. Mira used to laugh and call me campus grandma, but she laughed with her head on my pillow while eating my instant noodles, so I thought it was affection. She was the opposite of me in every way people liked better. Pretty without effort, careless without punishment, funny in the way that made rules seem embarrassing. She could forget a deadline and still get an extension because she tilted her head and said, "I know, I'm terrible, forgive me." Professors smiled. Senior students helped her. Even the cafeteria lady gave her extra soup. I was not jealous then. I admired her. I thought she was brave because she moved through the world as though consequences were things that happened to other people. I did not understand yet that she had spent years making other people become those consequences. The first time Mira asked for my student ID, it was so harmless that I still remember feeling guilty for hesitating. We had known each other for 11 days. She burst into our dorm room wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, face flushed, saying she had left her card in the laundry room and needed to grab dinner before the meal window closed. "Just 5 minutes," she said, clasping her hands like a child begging for sweets. "Please, Lena. I'll starve dramatically on this very floor." I told her the dining hall checked photos. She rolled her eyes. No one checks. They just scan. Besides, we both have dark hair in the ID pictures. If they squint, we're basically twins. We were not basically twins. Mira was delicate and bright-eyed, with curled lashes and a little beauty mark under her right eye that made strangers remember her. I had a serious face, straight black hair I usually tied low, and the kind of expression aunties called responsible when they meant tired. But she was already digging through my desk bowl where I kept my keys, and I was already imagining her hungry, and somehow imagining someone else's discomfort was enough to erase my own boundaries. I handed it over. She came back with dinner, 2 puddings, and a grin.
See?
Nothing exploded.
Something did, though.
It just took months for me to hear the blast. After that, my ID became a convenience. She needed it to enter the dorm because hers was at the bottom of her bag. She needed it to print lecture notes because her account was glitching. She needed it for the library because she had left hers charging, which made no sense but sounded cute when she said it. Every request arrived wrapped in urgency and affection. You're the only one I trust. You know I'd do it for you. Don't be weird. It's not that deep. Every yes made the next no harder, until no stopped feeling like an option and started feeling like proof that I was mean. The disaster began in week 9 of first semester, on a Thursday with cold rain and midterm exhaustion pressing everyone flat. Westbridge had a strict first-year dorm curfew after a series of off-campus incidents the previous year. Midnight on weekdays. If you were outside after that, your entry registered as a violation unless you had pre-approved leave, a medical record, an academic activity pass, or a supervisor note. 1 violation meant a warning. 2 meant parent contact for domestic students, sponsor contact for scholarship students, and a meeting with residence conduct. 3 meant removal from dorm housing. For most students, it was annoying.
For me, it was terrifying.
My scholarship covered housing only if I maintained good residential standing, a phrase printed in my award letter like a promise and a threat. Mira knew that. Everyone in our room knew that because I had taped the scholarship conditions inside my wardrobe door to remind myself what could not happen. That Thursday, Mira told me she was going to a group project meeting in the business building and asked to borrow my ID, just in case her card didn't work after hours. I said no. That was the first no I had given in weeks, and she looked at me as if I had dropped glass between us. It's literally for studying, she said. Do you think I'm going clubbing with your face? I laughed awkwardly because I wanted the air soft again and told her she could take my umbrella instead. She stared at the umbrella like it had insulted her. Then she shrugged, kissed the air near my cheek, and said, "Fine, Grandma. Keep your precious government document."
I thought that was the end.
At 12:17 a.m., resident security knocked on our door and asked why my student ID had been used to enter the East Gate 13 minutes after curfew while I was marked present in my dorm during room check. That sentence is the kind that makes no sense until it ruins you. I sat up in bed, heart slamming, while Mira lay under her blanket with her back turned, breathing slow and even. The guard held a tablet. The resident assistant, Celeste, stood behind him in a cardigan, looking uncomfortable but official. "Lena Hart," he asked. "Your card entered Eastgate at 12:13 a.m. I told him my card was on my desk. It was not. The bowl was empty. Mira shifted under her blanket, then sat up, rubbing her eyes. "What's happening?" she murmured, voice soft with sleep. I said, "My ID is gone." She frowned in perfect confusion. "Did you lose it?" I looked at her then, and something inside me understood before my mind could bear it. "Mira, did you take it?" Her eyes filled with hurt so quickly that I almost apologized. "Why would I take your card after you said no?" she whispered. "That's such a weird thing to accuse me of." The RA's expression changed. The guards did too. Not much. Just enough. Because a calm girl accused by a panicked girl always looks more believable if she knows when to cry. They searched the room and found my card at the bottom of my laundry basket, tucked inside a sock. Mira gasped. I said I had not put it there. No one said liar, but the silence learned the word. The entry log had my ID. The room check had my name. The camera at Eastgate was blurry because rain hit the lens, and the hood of the person entering covered most of their face. The hoodie was mine. I had lent it to Mira 2 days earlier and forgotten. Mira said maybe I had sleepwalked. Then she said maybe I had panicked and come back quickly. Then she said, crying now, that she did not want to get involved because she loved me, but I had been really stressed lately. That first disciplinary meeting lasted 28 minutes. I remember because I watched the wall clock while my future evaporated. The residence conduct officer, Ms. Arlen, asked why my card had been used after curfew. I told her I did not know. She asked whether I had ever lent my card to another student. I froze. That was the trap I had built myself. If I said no, Mira could produce weeks of messages where I had said things like, bring it back soon and don't lose my ID again. If I said yes, I admitted violating identity policy. I looked at Mira, who had insisted on coming for moral support, and she gave me a tiny, trembling nod that looked like encouragement. So, I told the truth badly. I said I had lent it before, but not that night. Ms. Arlen's pen stopped. So, you have a history of ID sharing. Mira covered her mouth. Not to hide guilt. To hide relief. I tried to explain the difference between foolish kindness and curfew fraud, but institutions do not like differences that require imagination. The report said I had failed to secure my student ID, had previously shared it, and had provided inconsistent statements regarding its use. Because it was my first official violation, they did not remove me immediately. They placed me on residential probation, notified the scholarship office, and warned me that any further issue would affect housing eligibility. I left shaking. Mira hugged me outside the office and cried into my shoulder. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, she said. People are so unfair. I held her because I still wanted to believe betrayal would announce itself with a knife, not with someone's tears dampening your collar. After that, Mira became careful. Not innocent. Careful. She stopped asking directly for my ID, but things disappeared and reappeared. My card would vanish from my desk for an hour, then turn up under my textbook. My dining credits dropped on days when I had packed lunch. My library account showed late-night study room bookings I had not made. When I confronted her, she looked wounded or amused depending on who was listening. Lena, you're getting paranoid. Maybe report it if you're so sure. Actually, don't report it, because they already think you're careless. The worst part was that she said these things kindly, as though advising me. By week 12, I had become the girl who checked her bag every 10 minutes. The girl who flinched when someone mentioned curfew. The girl who stopped sleeping because the scanner beep lived inside her skull. Then came the second violation. My ID accessed the old engineering lab at 1:04 a.m. during restricted hours. A bottle of solvent went missing. The lab camera caught a figure in a mask and oversized coat. My coat. Again. This time, Mira did not even come to the meeting. She sent a message. I think distance is healthiest until you get help. I'm worried about you. I was removed from dorm housing pending review. My scholarship entered risk assessment. My parents borrowed money for a private room I could not afford. My grades dropped because I was commuting 2 hours each way. People whispered that I had been stealing lab materials, sneaking out, maybe covering for a boyfriend. Mira moved into a better room with a girl from the student council and told everyone she hoped I recovered. I tried to appeal. I collected screenshots. But the messages proved I had lent my card before, which made every later accusation easier to pin to me. By the time I found proof that Mira had been using other students' IDs too, it was too late. The review board said the new information did not erase my responsibility for establishing a pattern of negligent card control. That phrase followed me longer than any rumor. I did not die dramatically. That is important. I did not fall from a rooftop after shouting her name. I did not get hit by a truck while clutching my appeal letter, though I know stories like mine are supposed to have clean lightning bolts of fate. My ending was smaller and uglier. I got sick during winter break after weeks of sleeping badly, eating cheaply, and working night shifts to cover housing. Pneumonia, then complications, then a hospital ceiling with water stains shaped like continents. My mother cried beside the bed and kept saying, You were always such a good girl. Like goodness was a medicine that had failed. My father tried to argue with billing staff in a voice that broke halfway through every sentence. On my last clear day, my old roommate posted a photo from the dorm winter gala. Mira wore a silver dress, my pearl hairpin, and the caption, "Survived the semester with grace." I laughed when I saw it, not because it was funny, but because my body had run out of ways to be furious. My phone slipped from my fingers. The hospital monitor made a sound like a distant scanner refusing entry. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I wanted my student ID back. Not the plastic.
The person it was supposed to protect.
Then everything went white, and when I opened my eyes again, Mira was standing in our freshman dorm room in a towel, hair dripping, asking to borrow my card for dinner because she had left hers in the laundry room. For 3 seconds, I thought hell was real and weirdly administrative. The room was exactly as it had been on the 11th day of university. My blue comforter still had its fold line from the package. My scholarship conditions were taped inside my wardrobe. The air smelled like detergent, rain, and Myra's peach body spray. My student ID lay in the ceramic bowl on my desk beside my keys, untouched, innocent, unaware that it had once helped bury me. Mira snapped her fingers in front of my face. "Lena, did you glitch?" I looked at her hand, then at the card, then at the calendar pinned above my desk. September 8th. Week 2. Months before the curfew check. Months before the lab accusation. Months before pneumonia. My first emotion was not joy. It was rage so pure and silent that it felt like waking up underwater and discovering I could breathe. Mira reached for the bowl. I moved faster. My hand closed around the ID before her fingers touched it. She blinked. Okay, dramatic. I smiled. It hurt my cheeks because I had forgotten smiling could be a weapon if you sharpened it first. "No," I said. One syllable. Small.
Clean.
Mira laughed, waiting for the rest. No as in? No as in I'm not lending my student ID. The room changed. Not visibly. The beds stayed where they were. The rain kept tapping the window. But Myra's face flickered, and behind the pretty confusion, I saw the machine that had eaten me start recalculating. "I'm literally starving," she said. "Then we can go together after you get dressed." That defeats the purpose. The purpose is dinner. Her towel slipped slightly as she folded her arms.
Wow.
I didn't know you were like this. In my first life, that sentence would have sent me scrambling to prove I was generous. In this life, I placed my ID around my neck and tucked it under my shirt. Now you do. The first no is never the end. It is the first knock on a wall you did not know was hollow.
Mira did not explode that night.
She became sweeter. That was more dangerous. She got dressed, found her own card exactly where it had always been, and insisted we go to dinner together. She bought me pudding with her meal credits and acted as if I had imagined the tension. "Sorry, I get cranky when I'm hungry," she said, pushing the pudding toward me. "You're just very rule-abiding." It's cute. I thanked her and did not eat it. Back in the room, I opened a private folder on my laptop titled Statistics Notes, because in both lives I had learned that people rarely look for secrets behind boring names. I wrote down the date, time, request, exact wording, and outcome. Then I changed my phone password, enabled app-based authentication on the student portal, ordered a lockable desk drawer from the campus store, and read the resident's identity policy line by line. In my first life, rules had been a net thrown over me after someone else pushed me into the water. In this life, I studied the knots. The policy was stricter than I remembered. Lending an ID was prohibited. Failure to report suspected misuse within 24 hours could count as negligence. Repeated unauthorized scans triggered conduct review. Cardholders could request identity protection status after suspected coercion or theft, requiring visual confirmation for high-risk access attempts. I had never known that last part. Of course, I had never known. Good girls do not read protection policies until after they need protection. I bookmarked the page. Then I took a photo of my ID, front and back, placed the real card into the new locked drawer when it arrived, and began wearing a temporary campus-issued wristband that only opened my assigned dorm entrance. Mira noticed by breakfast. Where's your lanyard? She asked. Safe. From who? She said lightly. I looked her in the eye. Anyone who might borrow it without permission. She laughed too loudly and spilled coffee on her sleeve. By week 3, Mira switched tactics. She stopped making requests that sounded like requests. Instead, she created little emergencies around me and waited for me to solve them with my card. Her printer balance failed 5 minutes before a tutorial. Her dining app logged her out during lunch rush. Her dorm entrance scan randomly malfunctioned when we were coming back from the library. Each time, she looked at me with that helpless brightness that made other people trip over themselves. Each time, I helped without handing over my identity. I printed the tutorial sheet for my account and wrote my name across the footer in thick pen before giving it to her, so it could not be submitted as hers. I walked with her to the dining help desk and waited while staff reset her app. I stood beside her at the dorm entrance and suggested she call security from her own phone. The first few times she played along. Then irritation began leaking through the seams. You're making everything so formal, she said one evening after the entrance issue. Rain slicked the pavement. Students streamed around us, tapping cards, laughing, living as though the world was not built from records. I'm helping you fix it properly. Properly, she repeated, making the word ugly. You sound like a handbook. Handbooks are underrated. Her smile thinned. Do you not trust me? There it was, the question that had owned me. I shifted my umbrella so the rain hit only me and not her, because some habits survive death before you train them out. I don't lend my ID, I said. That's not about trust. Everything is about trust between roommates. Then trust me to know my own boundary. She stared at me. For the first time since rebirth, she forgot to look hurt. She looked hungry, not for food, for leverage. The leverage came through other people. Mira was never strongest when she pulled directly. She preferred to make a room lean until you slid where she wanted. By the end of week 3, girls on our floor knew I was intense about my ID. By week 4, I was weirdly suspicious. By week 5, the story had grown legs and lipstick. Apparently, I had accused Mira of planning to steal from me because I was jealous that she made friends faster. I learned this while brushing my teeth in the communal bathroom when 2 girls stopped talking as soon as I entered, and one accidentally said, "That's her," before pretending to cough. In my first life, gossip had made me shrink. This time, I rinsed my mouth, looked at them through the mirror, and said, "If anyone asks to borrow your student ID, don't." The conduct policy puts responsibility on the cardholder. One of them, Priya from room 412, frowned. Wait, really? I nodded. Even if they use it without permission and you don't report it quickly, you can be treated as negligent. The other girl looked uncomfortable. Mira said you were overreacting. Maybe I am, I said, drying my hands. Overreacting early is cheaper than reacting late. I left before they could decide whether to laugh. That line spread too, but not the way Mira wanted. Students began checking their lanyards. Someone posted the policy screenshot in the floor chat with 3 skull emojis. Celeste, the RA, responded with a reminder. IDs are non-transferable. Please keep yours secure. Mira reacted with a laughing emoji. I reacted with nothing. Silence is useful when people expect you to defend yourself. It makes them listen for what you're not saying. Celeste was the first person I chose carefully in my second life. In my first, I had only met her properly during the disaster, when she stood behind the guard with tired eyes and a tablet. I had hated her then, because she represented the system that believed logs over me. But memory, when cooled, becomes fairer. Celeste had not mocked me. She had not embellished. At the appeal meeting, she had even said, "The camera footage is unclear." It did not save me, but she had said it. So in this life, I went to her before the trap closed instead of after. I found her on a Sunday afternoon in the RA office, surrounded by event flyers and a half-eaten granola bar. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. She looked up cautiously. RAs recognize incoming drama by posture. Sure. I sat with my hands folded because shaking looks like guilt if people already expect guilt. I want to ask about identity protection status. Her eyebrows rose. Has something happened? Not exactly. My roommate has repeatedly asked to borrow my ID and has tried to create situations where I would need to use mine for her access. I've refused, but I'm concerned. Celeste leaned back. That's a serious accusation. I'm not asking you to punish anyone, I said. I'm asking how to document pressure and protect myself if there's an attempt. The distinction mattered. People resist being dragged into punishment. They respect prevention because it sounds like paperwork, not conflict. I showed her my log. Dates, times, neutral wording, no insults. I showed screenshots where Mira joked about borrowing my magic card and where I replied, I can't lend my ID, but I can walk with you to the desk. Celeste read longer than I expected. Her face changed slowly, like a curtain being drawn. You've been very thorough. I have to be. Why? The answer in my throat was because I already died once from being casual. What I said was, my housing scholarship depends on good residential standing. Celeste nodded. That she understood. Money translates fear into official language. She printed the identity protection form. Identity protection status was both simple and humiliating. I had to declare that I believed my card might be targeted for misuse, agree not to lend it under any circumstances, request visual confirmation for late-night entries, and consent to security being notified if my old card or account triggered unusual access. The form asked for a reason. I wrote, repeated peer pressure to share card, concern about unauthorized use affecting scholarship housing. Not dramatic. Not emotional. True. Celeste signed as witness and told me to take it to the resident's desk in the morning. This doesn't accuse your roommate formally, she said. It just protects your account. That's what I want. She studied me. Most students only do this after something bad happens. I held the folder against my chest. I'm trying to be early. On Monday, I submitted the form to Ms. Arlen. Seeing her again before she had ruined me was like walking into a room where a ghost had not yet learned it was dead. She wore the same silver glasses, the same expression of administrative sympathy that never quite became warmth. You understand, she said, that if you later share your ID anyway, this form works against you. It establishes that you knew the policy. I understand. And you're not filing a conduct complaint at this stage?
No.
I only want my account protected. She stamped the form. The sound was soft, but to me it felt like armor locking around my ribs. Before I left, she added, keep your physical card secure. If it goes missing, report it immediately. I will, I said. In my bag, inside a zipped pouch, my ID rested against my palm like a pulse. Mira found out within 48 hours, which told me more about our dorm than the form itself. Someone at the desk must have mentioned identity protection loosely, or someone saw me leaving Ms. Arlen's office, or Mira had more eyes than I credited. She waited until our room was empty, then closed the door with unusual care. Did you report me? She asked.
No preamble. No vote.
The mask had slipped because private rooms do that to people. I looked up from my chemistry notes. I filed a protection form for my ID. Because of me. Because of repeated requests to borrow it. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You are actually insane. My pen paused. In my first life, that word would have entered me like a needle. In this life, I wrote the date in the margin of my notebook. Don't call me that. Or what? You'll file another little form? She stepped closer. Do you know how creepy it is to keep records of your roommate? We're supposed to live together. You're acting like I'm a criminal. Are you? The question landed between us, and stood there. Myra's eyes widened, then filled.
Fast.
Practiced. I can't believe you'd say that. I can't believe you keep needing my ID. It was jokes. Then stop joking. Her tears vanished. That was the pattern interrupt no one else ever saw. In public, tears rolled. In private, they switched off when they failed. You think you're untouchable because you have a scholarship, she said quietly. But people don't like girls who act superior. I closed my notebook. People didn't pay my tuition. Her mouth opened. For once, no sound came out. That was when I knew she would escalate. Not because she hated me most when I resisted, but because she needed everyone else to believe resistance was arrogance. If I kept my ID safe, she would go after the person holding it. The next phase was isolation. My instant noodles disappeared from the shared shelf. My laundry got moved wet from the washer to a dusty counter. Someone signed me up for a floor cleaning shift during my lab. When I entered the common room, conversations bent away from me. Mira never did anything traceable with her own hands when an atmosphere could do it for her. She became softer in public, quieter, wounded. She stopped sitting on my bed and began sitting near other girls with red eyes, saying, "I don't want to talk about it," which is the fastest way to make everyone talk. I let them. There is a kind of defense that looks too much like desperation, and I had wasted my first life performing it. Instead, I became useful. I shared exam summaries in the floor chat, not too many, just enough. I helped Priya understand calculus limits at midnight and refused the coffee she offered because favors can become strings if you are careless. I volunteered for the dorm recycling roster and took photos of completed shifts. I greeted the security guards by name. I learned which cameras covered which entrances. Not by sneaking. By asking normal questions during normal daylight in a normal voice. People underestimate a woman who becomes boring on purpose. Mira was glitter. I became a receipt. When the cleaning shift issue came up, I forwarded my lab timetable to Celeste and asked whether the roster could be corrected because I had not signed up. Celeste checked the sheet and frowned at the handwriting. "This isn't yours?" "No, do you know whose it is?" I looked at the rounded M-shaped first stroke, the theatrical loop on the L of Lena, and remembered seeing Mira write my name on a birthday card in our first life. "No," I said, "but I'd like a photo for my records." Celeste sent it. I added it to the folder. The funny thing about manipulation is that it often depends on speed. A rumor rushes ahead of facts. A crisis demands your immediate yes. A tearful accusation pressures you to answer before you think. So I slowed everything down. When Mira said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Sure," after I finished this paragraph, and watched her anger flicker because the scene in her head required me to drop everything. When someone said, "Mira feels like you hate her," I said, "That sounds hard. Did she say what she wants changed?" Specificity killed fog. When a girl from room 409 told me, "It's just an ID though," I asked, "Would you lend me your passport?" She said that was different. I asked why. She did not answer. Slowly, the floor split into three groups. People who thought I was cold, people who thought Mira was dramatic, and people who had begun quietly hiding their own cards. That last group mattered, because Myra's first life scheme had not depended only on me. I was simply the cleanest account, the most useful shield. She had borrowed others too. A dining scan here, a library room there, a printer login, a guest entry. Nothing big enough alone to alarm anyone. Together, it made her nearly untraceable. In this life, my refusal forced her to scatter. She borrowed from girls who were less afraid than me, more connected than me, or simply more willing to complain. By mid-October, the residence desk had received 3 separate reports of lost cards that reappeared after odd scans. Celeste mentioned it casually during a floor meeting. "Please do not leave IDs unattended. We've had several concerns." Mira sat cross-legged on the carpet, smiling down at her phone. I watched her thumbs stop moving. The curfew check that destroyed her in my second life was not random, though Mira believed it was, and that belief was my reward. It began with a campus safety email about unauthorized entry attempts in first-year dorms. In my first life, I had skimmed it while panicking about midterms. In this life, I read it like prophecy. The email announced a 2-week curfew compliance audit, with occasional manual checks after 11:30 p.m. Students returning near curfew needed functioning IDs and visual confirmation if flagged. Guests had to be pre-registered. No exceptions for forgotten cards unless security could verify identity and residence before midnight. The dates matched the week Mira had used my card at the East Gate in my first life. I printed the email and highlighted one line. Students are responsible for ensuring their own access credentials are current and in their possession. Then I waited. Waiting is not passive when you know where the river bends. Mira spent that week testing doors. I saw her at the west entrance pretending to search her bag while watching someone else scan in. I saw her in the common room leaning over Priya's shoulder as Priya logged into the printer. I saw her borrow a hoodie from a girl with my build and dark hair. Every little action pulled the old timeline closer, but with one crucial difference. I was no longer underneath it. On Wednesday, Mira asked if I was going to the late library review. No, I said. I'm studying here. You should go.
Professor han gives hints.
I have the recording. You're so disciplined, she said, and smiled in a way that made the room colder. At 9:40 p.m., she left wearing borrowed sneakers, carrying a white tote bag I recognized from the First Life's blurry gate footage. At 10:05, I checked my locked drawer. My ID was there. At 10:07, I took a photo. At 10:10, I messaged Celeste. For my records, I'm in my room for the night and have my protected ID secured. No issue, just noting because of the audit. Celeste replied with a thumbs up. A tiny icon. A lifeline. At 11:31 p.m., the dorm intercom chimed for manual curfew confirmation. The sound sliced through the building with polite menace. Attention residents. Tonight's curfew compliance check will begin in 10 minutes. Please remain in your assigned rooms or common areas with your ID available. Doors opened along the hallway. Girls groaned, laughed, cursed. Someone shouted, "I'm in pajamas. This is violence." I put on a cardigan, removed my ID from the locked drawer, and placed it around my neck. My hands were steady until I noticed that my old navy lanyard was missing from the back of my chair. Not the card, the lanyard. In my first life, my card and lanyard had vanished together. In this life, the card was safe, but the lanyard, the recognizable strap with my scholarship program logo, was gone. I stared at the empty chair hook and felt the past breathe behind me. Mira had taken the costume even without the key. It was clever. At a blurry camera angle, a lanyard could suggest a card. At a rushed desk, confidence could fill gaps. I almost laughed. She had adapted, but not enough. Celeste knocked at 11:44. Curfew check. I opened the door before the second knock. She scanned my protected ID with a handheld reader, checked my face, and marked me present. Her gaze flicked over my shoulder to Myra's empty bed. Roommate. Not here. Do you know if she has pre-approved leave? No, Celeste's mouth tightened. She entered something on the tablet. If she returns before midnight with her own ID, it's fine. Of course. I did not mention the lanyard. Not yet. Timing matters. Accused too early, and a liar gets warning. Let the system ask first, and the liar must answer in the language of evidence. At 11:53, my phone buzzed. Mira, are you awake? I looked at the message until the screen dimmed. In my first life, that message had come at 12:21. Something weird is happening. Don't say anything until I explain. This time, the panic was early. I did not answer. Another buzz. Lena. Then, don't be childish. Then, I need you to come downstairs. Then the one I had been waiting for. I have your lanyard by accident, LOL. LOL. 3 letters trying to put a clown nose on theft. I screenshotted each message. At 11:56, Celeste's voice sounded from the hallway near the stairwell, speaking into her radio. Resident from 417 confirmed inside. Roommate not present. My window faced the front entrance. I crossed the room, lifted the curtain a finger width, and saw Mira under the awning. Damp hair clinging to her cheeks, white tote bag twisted in one hand. She was not alone. A boy in a black jacket stood half-hidden behind the bike racks, watching. Not a project partner. Not a classmate from the library. In my first life, rumors had mentioned a senior who sold access to restricted lab spaces and exam file leaks, but I had never connected him to Mira until after everything. Seeing him there now made my stomach turn. Mira checked her phone, typed furiously, then lifted something to the scanner. The navy lanyard swung from her wrist. The scanner blinked red. She tried again.
Red.
She leaned closer, maybe saying my name through the intercom. The guard inside the lobby did not open the door. Because my actual card was protected, because my presence was already verified upstairs, because the account had a warning attached, because for once the little systems that had trapped me were facing the correct direction. At 11:58, my phone rang. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came a voice message. I pressed play and held the phone low, recording the sound on my laptop too, because the dead version of me trusted nothing. Myra's voice came through breathless and furious. Lena, open the door. This isn't funny. I know you're mad, but if I fail curfew, it goes on my record. You don't understand. I have an interview tomorrow, and if residence reports me, I'm screwed. Just come down and say you gave me permission to hold the lanyard. They're asking questions.
Please.
Please, don't do this over a stupid misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That was what she called standing outside with my stolen lanyard during the exact curfew audit she expected me to fear. I saved the file. At 11:59, Celeste knocked again. Lena? I opened the door. She looked more official than before, cardigan replaced by a residence jacket, tablet against her chest. Security says someone at the front entrance has a lanyard with your scholarship logo and maybe claiming connection to your ID. Do you have your card? I lifted it. Yes. Have you lent your lanyard or card to anyone tonight? No. Do you consent to come downstairs to confirm? You're not in trouble. In my first life, every invitation downstairs had been a trap. In this life, it was a stage. I took my folder from the drawer. Yes. As we walked, doors cracked open. Faces appeared. Whispers moved ahead of us like wind through dry leaves. I did not look at them. I watched the stair numbers descend. 4th floor, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. Each landing felt like stepping out of an old grave. The lobby was brighter than I remembered, maybe because I was not crying this time. Fluorescent lights flattened everything. The wet footprints near the entrance, the guard's tired expression, the campus safety poster about your ID, your responsibility, and Mira outside the glass doors with my navy lanyard hanging from her fist. The office window beside the lobby was dark. A sign had been flipped to closed. Next opening time, 8:30 a.m. That sign mattered more than any speech I could have given. It meant no residence officer would come down to sort it out quietly. It meant the night protocol had to run as written. It meant Mira had to stand where she was until the record existed. When she saw me, her expression changed with theatrical speed. Relief, betrayal, pleading, all arranged for witnesses. Lena, she cried through the intercom. Tell them it was an accident. I grabbed your lanyard, because ours were tangled.
The guard looked at me.
Celeste looked at me. Priya, somehow already in the lobby in slippers, looked at me from near the vending machines. I held up my own ID on its plain replacement cord. My card was locked in my drawer from 10:05 until curfew check. I did not lend her my lanyard or my ID. I have photos and messages. Myra's face went white in a way tears could not decorate. Why would you take photos of your ID in a drawer? That's so weird. There it was again. Not denial. Attack the preparation. Make caution look unstable. I opened the folder and handed Celeste the printed identity protection form, then showed the screenshot of Myra's "I have your lanyard by accident LOL" message. The guard leaned toward the screen. Celeste's eyebrows drew together. Outside, the boy in the black jacket was gone. Mira began to cry when she realized the door would not open for her emotions. I didn't steal it, she said, voice cracking through the intercom. I picked it up by mistake. We're roommates. Her stuff is everywhere. That was bold, considering my side of the room looked like a stationery store had joined the military. Why were you scanning it? Celeste asked. Mira swallowed. I wasn't scanning it. I was holding it while trying my card. The guard checked the log. Your card has not scanned at this entrance tonight. Myra's tears paused. Because my phone died and my card is in my phone case. Then where is your card? Inside. Inside the dorm? I mean, she looked at me, and for the first time, there was no performance between us. Just hatred. Pure, hot, personal. Lena, please. Please don't ruin my life, because you're obsessed with rules. I'll apologize, okay? I'll tell everyone you're not crazy. Just open the door. The lobby went so quiet I heard the vending machine hum. Priya's eyes widened. Celeste's face hardened at the word crazy. The guard glanced at the clock. Midnight. The system chimed once. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. A soft administrative note marking a failed curfew return. Mira heard it too. Her body jerked, as if the sound had struck her. On the monitor, a line appeared under her name. Resident not confirmed before curfew. Manual review required. Then a second line. Attempted access using non-matching protected credential indicator. Mira stared at the screen through the glass, lips parted. The closed office sign reflected over her face like a label. Here is the part people never understand about revenge. The best kind does not feel like fire. It feels like not reaching for a burning pan with your bare hand just because the person who threw it at you is screaming. Mira begged. Not prettily now. Not with delicate tears. She pressed the intercom button until the guard told her to stop. She said she had an interview for the residential ambassador program in the morning. She said her parents would kill her if they found out. She said the boy outside was nobody. She said she had anxiety. She said I had promised, then changed it to implied, then changed it to roommate share things, then to I was going to return it before she noticed. Every sentence dug another inch. Celeste asked one question at a time, voice calm enough to be merciless. Did Lena give you permission to take the lanyard? No, but did you have your own student ID in your possession? Not exactly. Were you attempting to enter after 11:30 p.m. during an active curfew audit? I was only 2 minutes. Did you send these messages asking Lena to come downstairs and say she lent it to you? Mira looked at me again. I thought of hospital lights, of my mother saying I was good, of my father's bent shoulders, of Mira and Silver captioning my ruin as grace. Lena, she whispered, and this time she used the voice from our first week, soft and intimate, the voice that had once made me feel chosen. Please. You know me. I nodded slowly.
Ido.
The guard wrote something down. They could not leave her outside in the rain forever, of course. This was a university, not a fairy tale, and consequences came with forms, not thunderbolts. At 12:18 a.m., after verifying her identity through security questions and calling the on-duty residence manager, the guard opened the side entrance and escorted Mira inside without clearing the violation. That distinction mattered. She entered the building physically, but not cleanly in the system. Her return remained late. Her attempted use of my protected credential remained attached. Her possession of my lanyard became an incident note. The boy in the black jacket, captured briefly on exterior camera, became a question she refused to answer. Mira walked past me in the lobby with wet hair, mascara under her eyes, and a face stripped of softness. For 1 second, she leaned close enough that only I heard her. You think you won, she whispered. You just made yourself look insane in writing. In my first life, threats worked because I believed every future was decided by the loudest story. In this life, I had already watched the loudest story kill me. I smiled. Then write carefully. She flinched. Celeste asked me to stay behind for a brief statement. I gave 1 page, factual and dry. I did not call Mira evil. I did not mention rebirth, death, or the satisfaction of watching a trap reverse. I wrote, I did not give permission. I had previously filed protection status due to repeated requests. I confirmed possession of my ID before curfew. Mira messaged me asking me to say I lent it to her. Receipts do not need adjectives. When I returned to the 4th floor, half the hallway pretended not to be awake. Priya caught my eye and mouthed, Are you okay? I nodded. Then I went into my room, locked my drawer, and slept for 7 straight hours for the first time in 2 lives. Morning did not bring peace. It brought spectacle. Myra's bed was empty when I woke, but her damp clothes lay in a heap on the floor like shed skin. The floor chat had exploded overnight and then gone strangely silent after Celeste posted. Reminder: do not speculate about conduct matters. Student IDs and access credentials must never be shared. Residents are responsible for their own compliance. Speculate meant everyone was speculating. At breakfast, conversation stopped again when I entered, But this silence was different. Not friendly. Not hostile. Recalibrating. Priya waved me over. 2 weeks earlier, she might have avoided being seen with me. Now, she pushed a chair out with her foot. Sit, she said too loudly.
Y sat.
She leaned in. Did she actually have your lanyard? Yes. And she tried to make you say you lent it? Yes. Priya covered her face. I lent her my card once for the printer. Across the table, another girl named Hannah lowered her spoon. She used my meal scan last week. Someone else said, she borrowed my hoodie Wednesday. The table became a small courtroom of embarrassed memories. Nobody likes admitting they were fooled, so they first describe it as a misunderstanding. Then as a favor. Then as a pattern. I did not push. I let them arrive. Priya looked sick. Should we report it? Only if you want to, I said. But write down dates while you remember. Hannah stared at me. You sound like you've done this before. My hand tightened around my cup. I learned early. Not a lie. Not enough truth to drown in. Mira returned to the room at 10:26 a.m. with her mother's voice leaking from her phone speaker in furious bursts. She shut the door, ended the call, and stood with her back to me. For a moment, she looked very young.
That almost moved me.
Almost. Then she turned, and the youngness became calculation. My residential ambassador interview got postponed, she said. Pending review. I highlighted a sentence in my textbook. Okay. Okay. She laughed, breathless. That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say? Maybe that you're sorry for escalating things? I looked up. I didn't take your ID. I didn't take your ID either. I took a lanyard by accident. And asked me to lie. Because you made it look worse than it was. Her voice rose, then dropped as she remembered thin dorm walls. She sat on her bed and pressed her hands together. Listen, we can fix this. If you tell them you overreacted because of your scholarship anxiety, they'll reduce it. I'll say I should have communicated better. We both look mature. In my first life, she had offered joint guilt too. Not at the beginning, when it could save me, but later, when it could dilute her. No, her mouth twitched. You can't just keep saying no to everything. I can. People will hate you. Some already do. You'll have to live with me. Not necessarily. That landed. She looked toward the door, then back at me. What did you do? I requested a room transfer last week, citing identity security concerns.
Her face strained.
Last week. Yes. Before anything happened? Before last night happened. You planned this. I closed my textbook. I protected myself. Same thing. Only to someone planning to hurt me. The room transfer request had been another small knot tied early. I knew from my first life that after a conduct incident, moving rooms looked reactive and suspicious, like you were fleeing conflict. Before an incident, it looked prudent. Celeste had helped me phrase it without accusation. Roommate relationship has deteriorated due to repeated boundary issues regarding personal property and access credentials. The housing office had placed me on a wait list. After the curfew check, the wait list became a priority. By Friday, I was offered a single room on the third floor of the older north wing, smaller than my current space and facing the laundry courtyard, but mine. Mira watched me pack with an expression that moved between disbelief and fury. You're really leaving me with this mess. I folded my sweaters into a box. It's your mess. You act like you're perfect.
No.
I act like I'm responsible for my own card. She stood in front of the door, as if her body could block the future. Do you know what people are saying about you? Less than they're saying about you. Her eyes flashed. Enjoy being alone, Lena. I lifted the box. I survived worse. She did not know what that meant, but it scared her anyway. The hallway was crowded when I moved. Not openly, of course. University students pretend not to watch while watching with their entire faces. Priya carried one box. Hannah carried my lamp. Celeste signed the transfer form at the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw Mira standing in the room we had shared in 2 lives, my stolen Navy lanyard sealed in an evidence bag on her desk because security had not yet collected it. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not harmless. Never harmless. just smaller without my fear magnifying her. For a week, I thought the main battle was over. That was my mistake. Rebirth does not turn enemies into lessons after one public failure. It gives them time to become desperate. Myra's conduct review was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Until then, she moved like smoke through campus, appearing wherever sympathy could be harvested. She told people I had staged the whole thing because I wanted a single room. She said I had given her the lanyard earlier and then pretended not to. She said my scholarship made me paranoid. She said I had a folder on everyone, not just her. That last rumor almost worked because fear of surveillance spreads faster than fear of theft. A student I barely knew confronted me outside the library. "Are you keeping screenshots of people?" she demanded. "Only messages involving my ID or property." "That's creepy." "Taking someone's access credential is creepier." She had no answer, but she left unconvinced. Rumors do not need logic if they offer people a way to feel less foolish. By Monday, someone had taped a paper ID card to my new room door with the words, "Don't steal my ID. I'll cry." The handwriting was disguised, but the cruelty was familiar. In my first life, I would have torn it down quickly, cheeks burning. This time, I photographed it, took it to Celeste, and asked whether hallway harassment counted as retaliation after a documented security incident. Celeste sighed like someone whose workload had just doubled. Yes. She checked the camera. The person who taped it was not Mira. It was Hannah's friend, Elise, who had borrowed Myra's curling iron and apparently her version of events. Elise cried when confronted and said it was just a joke. That phrase should be printed on half the world's warning signs. She received a warning. More importantly, the retaliation note entered Myra's review file as context because conduct offices understand ecosystems even when students pretend not to. The review happened in a seminar room, not the residence office, because Ms. Arlen wanted recording equipment and space for multiple statements. I was not required to attend the entire hearing, only to give my account. Still, seeing Mira across the table made my body remember the first timeline so violently that for a second I tasted hospital oxygen. She wore a cream sweater, no makeup except a little under-eye concealer, hair tied back like a girl too distressed to care about beauty. Her mother sat beside her in a blazer, lips pressed thin. I had not expected parents. Scholarship students feared sponsor calls. Wealthy students summoned advocates. Ms. Arlen began with procedural language. The residence conduct officer from Student Affairs joined by video. Celeste sat at the end with her tablet. The guard had submitted a written statement. The evidence was almost boring. Identity protection form dated before incident. Curfew audit email. Lena confirmed present in room. Screenshot of lanyard message. Voice message asking Lena to say she lent it. Access log showing Myra's own card did not scan. Camera still of Mira at entrance holding navy lanyard. Recovery of lanyard for Mira. Boring evidence is the hardest to charm. Myra's mother tried anyway. These are young girls. Roommates share items. My daughter made a careless mistake, but this has become very adversarial. Ms. Arlen nodded politely. The issue is not merely possession of the lanyard. It is the attempted use of a protected credential indicator during curfew audit and the request that another resident misrepresent permission. Mira cried silently. Her mother placed a hand over hers. I watched without satisfaction. Then the conduct officer asked Mira, "How did the lanyard come into your possession?" Mira inhaled shakily. "It was tangled with my scarf." Celeste looked down at the evidence bag photo. The lanyard was removed from a hook on Lena's chair in her room after Lena had moved her card to a locked drawer. How would it tangle with your scarf? Myra's tears stopped. Again, like a tap turned off. That was the moment Priya saved me, without meaning to. She had submitted a statement that morning, and I had not seen it. Neither had Mira. Ms. Arlen read from it after Myra's scarf explanation collapsed. Resident Priya N. reports that on October 3rd, Mira asked to borrow her card for printing and later returned it after a library study room booking appeared under Priya's account. Priya states she did not make the booking. Resident Hannah L. reports a meal scan used while she was in class. Resident Elise M. Reports lending Mira a hoodie on October 12th matching the exterior camera still from the Curfew incident. Myra's mother stiffened. These are unrelated allegations. They establish potential pattern, the conduct officer said. Mira looked at me as if I had invented the statements. I had not. That was the beauty of refusing to become the whole case. Once I stepped aside, other doors opened. Priya's statement did what mine alone could not. It made the room understand that my ID had not been the obsession. Access was. Clean records were. Other girls' ordinary trust had been Myra's toolkit. The conduct officer asked whether Mira had borrowed other IDs. Mira said, "Everyone does it." Ms. Arlen's pen moved. Mira realized too late that everyone does it was not a denial. Her mother whispered sharply, "Mira." Myra's face crumpled, but the tears could not find their old path. Too many people had watched them stop and start. My statement took 6 minutes. I had practiced until each sentence was smooth enough not to cut me on the way out. I did not lend Mira my student ID or lanyard on the night of the curfew audit. I had previously declined multiple requests to lend my ID. Because my housing scholarship depends on residential standing, I filed identity protection status before the incident. I documented possession of my card that evening because I was concerned about unauthorized use. When Mira messaged me saying she had my lanyard by accident and asked me to come downstairs, I did not respond because I did not want to create confusion during an active audit. I confirmed with security that my card was with me. I want my record to remain clear. That was all. Mira stared at me, waiting for anger she could call revenge. I gave her none. Ms. Arlen asked if I wanted to add anything about roommate conflict. I said, no. Myra's mother looked surprised. Maybe she had expected me to froth, to become the unstable girl her daughter described. Controlled women frightened people who planned to dismiss them as emotional. After I was excused, I stood outside the seminar room near a poster advertising peer mediation. Through the door, voices rose and fell. I could not hear words. I did not need to. 10 minutes later, Mira burst out alone, face blotched, phone in hand. She stopped when she saw me. For one wild second, I thought she might lunge. Instead, she laughed. Congratulations, she said. You got what you wanted. I looked at the closed seminar door behind her.
No.
I got what I protected. They're putting me on probation. That sounds like a consequence. I might lose ambassador eligibility. Then you shouldn't have used other people as keys. Her lips trembled. You're enjoying this. I thought about lying. Then I thought about my first grave.
A little, I said.
She flinched harder than if I had shouted. The university did not expel Mira. Stories like this rarely end with the villain dragged away forever. Real institutions prefer measured language, residential probation for 1 semester, loss of ambassador eligibility, mandatory ethics workshop, restitution for misused services if confirmed, restricted guest privileges, and relocation to a monitored room in another building because our floor environment had become compromised. Her curfew failure remained on her record. So did the identity misuse finding. For a student whose image depended on effortless trustworthiness, it was a crack across glass. She could still attend classes. She could still smile. But when she reached for someone's card, people noticed. When she said just this once, people remembered. When she cried, some still comforted her, but others watched for the pause. That was enough. I did not need her destroyed. I needed her unable to keep borrowing other people's lives without leaving fingerprints. My own record remained clear. Ms. Arlen sent a formal letter confirming that I had complied with identity policy, had reported concerns before misuse occurred, and bore no responsibility for Myra's curfew violation. I printed 3 copies. 1 for my scholarship file, 1 for my folder. 1 I folded into my journal like a pressed flower from a battlefield. The Housing Scholarship Office acknowledged receipt and confirmed my good residential standing. I read that email so many times the word stopped looking like English and became weather.
Clear.
Stable.
Safe.
Safety, I learned, is not the same as peace. After the hearing, I had the life I thought I wanted. A single room, a clear record, fewer people asking for favors, my ID secure against my chest. Yet I still woke at night reaching for a card that was not missing. I still heard scanner beeps and microwave buttons and elevator chimes. I still distrusted kindness that arrived too quickly. Rebirth had not made me fearless. It had made me early. There is a difference. In my North Wing room, I developed rituals. Every night, I placed my ID in the locked drawer, photographed it only when something fell off, and then forced myself not to check again. I taped my scholarship conditions inside the wardrobe again, but underneath them I added a new note in my own handwriting. A boundary is not a betrayal. Priya visited sometimes with snacks and calculus questions. Our friendship grew slowly because I no longer mistook intensity for closeness. She apologized for believing Mira. I told her belief is easy when someone hands you a story that makes your own choices feel normal. Hannah apologized too, crying in the laundry room while holding a basket of wet towels. I accepted, but I did not comfort her enough to make her guilt my chore. That was new. That was hard. Good girls are trained to become pillows for the people who hurt them as long as those people say sorry with enough moisture in their eyes. I was learning to be something better than good. I was learning to be responsible for myself without becoming responsible for everyone else's feelings about it. Mira did not disappear. She became a shadow at the edge of campus life, and shadows can still trip you if you pretend the sun erased them. In November, she tried one final move. The pattern was so familiar I almost admired her stamina. An anonymous complaint reached the scholarship office claiming I had created a hostile residential environment by secretly recording and tracking other students. It alleged that I had intimidated floor members into giving statements against Mira and that I had a personal vendetta. The email used phrases Mira loved: obsessive documentation, socially punitive, weaponizing policy. The scholarship coordinator, Dr. Ellison, requested a meeting. My hands went cold when I saw the email. Not because the accusation was strong, but because my first life had taught me how easily institutions grow tired of complicated girls. I brought my folder, my identity protection approval, Ms. Arlen's clearance letter, Celeste's note about retaliation, and screenshots showing I had never asked others to make statements. Dr. Ellison was a narrow woman with kind eyes and a terrifyingly tidy desk. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Lena, there is a difference between documentation relevant to a safety concern and inappropriate surveillance. Based on what residents provided, your actions were within policy." My breath left so sharply she paused. "Did you think we were going to revoke your scholarship?" I stared at the folder. I've learned not to assume fairness arrives without evidence. She was quiet for a moment. That is a sad lesson. It was expensive. She signed a note confirming no scholarship action would be taken. As I left, she said, "You should consider applying for the Student Conduct Advisory Panel next year. Students who understand policy before disaster are rare." I almost laughed. In another life, policy had been the language used to bury me. In this one, it might become a tool I could hand to someone else before they drowned. The anonymous complaint backfired because it reopened the question of retaliation. Campus IT traced it not to Mira directly, but to a library computer accessed with a temporary guest code requested by her new roommate. Not enough for a major charge. Enough for a warning. Enough for people to roll their eyes when Myra's name came up. Her mother called the residence office twice, then stopped. The boy in the black jacket was later identified during a separate investigation into unauthorized lab access. I heard about it from Priya, who heard from her lab partner, whose cousin worked campus safety, which meant the details were probably half wrong, but the outcome was real. Several students had been using borrowed IDs and late-night entries to access restricted rooms where old exam papers and equipment were stored. Myra's connection could not be fully proven beyond the Curfew incident, but her name was close enough to the smoke that clubs stopped inviting her into leadership. The residential ambassador program selected Priya instead. That twist made the floor whisper for days. Priya nearly declined because she felt guilty benefiting from Myra's fall. I told her, "You didn't make her take my lanyard." Priya said, "No, but I reported her." "After she used your card?" She nodded slowly. "Right. Watching her learn that sequence mattered was like watching a younger version of me step away from a cliff. The world teaches women to put their own actions last in every sentence. He yelled because I upset him. She lied because I confronted her.
They punished me because I documented it. No.
Sequence is survival. Mira took.
Mira litt.
Mira failed curfew. Mira faced review. I protected myself. The grammar of blame can save or kill you. Final exams arrived with cold mornings and the smell of burnt coffee in every hallway. In my first life, this was when I had been commuting from a cheap room above a laundromat, feverish and terrified, reading scholarship emails on the bus with my stomach folding in on itself. In this life, I woke in my single room, scanned into breakfast with my own card, attended review sessions, and slept enough to dream about things other than locked doors. My grades rose. Not magically. Rebirth did not pour knowledge into my head. It gave me back the hours that panic had stolen. I studied like a girl building a bridge out of every page. Sometimes I saw Mira across lecture halls. She still looked beautiful. That unsettled me at first. I wanted consequences to make her visibly ugly, to turn her outside into her inside, so the world would stop being fooled. But beauty is not justice's responsibility. She sat alone more often. People were polite, not warm. When she caught me looking once, she mouthed, "Happy?" It was such a small, bitter thing that I almost ignored it. Then I mouthed back, "Yes." Her eyes widened. Maybe she expected guilt. Maybe she expected me to pretend I was above satisfaction. I was not. I was alive, housed, studying, and holding my own name in my own pocket. Happiness did not need to be saintly to be real. On the last night before winter break, Westbridge held the dorm gala. I had avoided the poster for weeks because in my first life, Myra's silver dress photo had been the last image of campus I saw before the hospital swallowed me. But Priya had become an ambassador, and she begged me to come for 1 hour because she had to stand at the welcome table and would die of boredom in a blazer. I went. Not in silver. Never silver. I wore a dark green dress my mother had bought on sale and pearl earrings that were mine, not hairpins borrowed and captioned by someone else. The dining hall had been transformed with fairy lights and fake snow. Students posed under balloon arches. A playlist tried too hard. For a while, I almost forgot the old photo. Then Mira entered. She wore the same silver dress. My breath stopped. Time folded. For 1 second, the room became a hospital screen, a caption, a thumb scrolling over my defeat. Mira saw me see her. Her chin lifted. She walked toward the photo backdrop with 2 girls I did not know, arranged her hair over one shoulder, and smiled at a phone. The old timeline reached for me, asking me to become the dead girl watching from a bed. I took out my own phone. Priya appeared beside me. "Are you okay?" I looked at Mira beneath the fairy lights, still pretty, still trying, but no longer standing on my bones. "Take a picture with me," I said. Priya grinned. We stood under a paper moon, her blazer crooked, my green dress wrinkled from sitting, both of us laughing because the first photo came out blurry. I posted it later with no dramatic caption. Just finished the semester. My mother commented with 12 heart emojis. My father texted privately, "Proud of you always." I cried then, but gently. Some tears wash wounds instead of feeding them. Myra's final attempt to speak to me came after the gala, outside the North Wing entrance, where frost silvered the grass. I had left early, carrying my heels in one hand, ID tucked safely inside my coat. She was waiting near the bike racks, arms folded against the cold. For a moment, with the fairy lights behind her and the empty path ahead, she looked like the ghost of a choice I had once made wrong. "Lena," she said. I stopped at a distance. "What do you want?" She laughed softly. "You always talk like there's a policy for conversations. With you, there should be." Her mouth tightened, but she did not attack. Not immediately. "I'm transferring dorms next semester." I heard. "Of course you did." She looked toward the closed office window, dark for the night. The same kind of window she had stood outside weeks earlier. "Do you ever think you went too far?" The cold moved through my dress and into my knees. In my first life, I had asked myself that about every boundary I failed to set. Was I too suspicious? Too ungenerous? Too dramatic? Had I caused trouble by resisting trouble? This time, the question sounded tired.
No miras Walud.
I made mistakes. You made choices.
Fine.
Choices. She kicked lightly at the pavement. But you planned for me to fail. I planned for me to be safe. You knew I might use it. I knew you wanted to. She looked at me then, and something like fear crossed her face.
Why?
Why were you so ready from the beginning? Nobody is that careful over a lanyard. The truth rose in me like heat, because you killed the life I was supposed to have, because I remember the smell of the hospital, because I watched my parents age over a debt you created and called grace. I said none of that. Some truths are too large for the people who earn them. Because the first time someone asks to borrow your identity, I said, you should believe they might use it. Myra's eyes shone, but she did not cry. Maybe she knew I would notice the switch. I really did like you at first, she said. That hurt more than I wanted it to. I know. Does that make it worse? Yes. She nodded, almost to herself. Then she walked away, silver dress flashing beneath her coat, like a blade being sheathed. Winter break in my second life felt stolen in the best way. I went home with my scholarship intact and my suitcase full of laundry. My mother made soup as if soup could repair every version of me, and maybe it repaired one. My father asked about classes, careful not to ask too directly about the dorm issue because he knew my face changed when people said it. On New Year's Eve, I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom and opened the folder. Not the digital one, the physical one. Identity protection form, curfew audit email, screenshots,
Statement.
clearance letter, scholarship confirmation, room transfer approval. Each page was proof of a battle, but also a chain. I realized I had been carrying the evidence even after the danger passed because some part of me believed reality might reverse if I stopped proving it. I took out the clearance letter and scholarship confirmation. Those I kept. The rest, I scanned once, saved securely, and placed the paper copies into a shredder my father used for tax documents. The machine chewed Myra's messages into thin white strips. You sure? My father asked from the doorway. He did not know what they were, not fully. I nodded. I don't need to sleep beside them anymore. He sat on the edge of the bed and said, when you were little, you used to label all your school supplies. Every pencil. I smiled faintly. Sounds like me. You said if your name was on it, it would come back. My throat tightened. He picked up one strip of shredded paper and let it fall. Sometimes things don't come back. Sometimes you just stop giving them away. I leaned against his knee like I had when I was 7, and for the first time since rebirth, I let someone comfort me without wondering what it would cost. When second semester began, my new student ID arrived in the mail because protected accounts required reissued cards after an incident. The photo was terrible. My eyes were half tired, my hair uneven, and the campus printer had given my skin a faint gray tint. I loved it. It was not the ID from my first life, not the card that had vanished into Myra's hand, not the one found in my laundry basket like planted evidence. It was ugly and mine. At the residence desk, Ms. Arlen activated it and slid it across the counter. You'll still have visual confirmation for late-night access unless you request removal. I'll keep it. That may be inconvenient. That's fine. She hesitated. You handled last semester well. Compliments from administrators sound like stapled paper, but I accepted it. Thank you. Most students your age struggle to separate personal conflict from policy. I had motivation. She gave the smallest smile. Outside, campus was bright with a false optimism of January. New students toured buildings. Returning students hugged too loudly. Somewhere, a scanner beeped green. I clipped the new ID to a plain black lanyard with a breakaway clasp and tucked it inside my coat. Not hidden from shame. Protected from habit. Priya met me near the fountain, waving a coffee. Ambassador training is already terrible, she announced. They used the phrase community values 17 times. Only 17? I counted because of you.
Good.
Documentation saves lives. She laughed, then sobered. Myra's in East Hall now. I know. Are you worried? I watched a group of girls pass, lanyards swinging carelessly from open bags. No, I said, and realized it was almost true. The last thing Mira lost was not housing status, ambassador eligibility, or the easy trust of the floor. It was access to the version of me who could be moved by urgency alone. That version had been useful to everyone except me. She had lent notes because someone looked stressed, lent clothes because someone complimented them, lent time because silence felt rude, lent her name because a hungry roommate asked sweetly. I do not hate her. She was doing what she had been praised for doing, being easy to need. But I mourn her carefully, the way you mourn a house you escaped before it burned down. Sometimes people still test me. A classmate asks me to tap them into a study room because their card is upstairs. I say I'll wait while they get it. A girl in the dining line asks to use my meal scan and pay me back. I say no, but I can buy her something separately if she's hungry. A lab partner asks for my portal login to download a file. I send the file myself. Boundaries do not make me less kind. They make my kindness harder to weaponize. That is the lesson I would carve above every dorm entrance if universities allowed honest architecture. Do not lend someone the thing they will use to become you when consequences arrive. Lend a pen. Lend an umbrella. Lend an explanation, a snack, a shoulder if you trust the weight. But keep your name.
Keep your key.
Keep the record that says you were where you were, doing what you did, living the life that belongs to you. Months later, during spring rain, I passed the front entrance at 11:57 p.m. after an approved late library session. The same yellow light shone over the glass. The same scanner waited. For a second, memory overlaid the scene so sharply that I saw Mira outside again, soaked and begging, my navy lanyard twisted in her fist, the office window dark behind her. Then the present corrected itself. The entrance was empty. My new card rested warm in my palm. I tapped it.
Green.
The door opened. Such a small sound. Access granted.
No applause. No witness. No caption.
Just me stepping inside before midnight under my own name. As the door clicked shut, I looked toward the closed office and felt no triumph, only distance. Mira had failed the dorm curfew check because she counted on my fear arriving on schedule. She thought I would run downstairs, breathless and apologetic, to rescue her from the consequences of holding what was mine. She did not understand that rebirth had changed the timing of my life. I no longer arrived after the damage, carrying explanations no one wanted. I arrived early. I locked drawers. I filed forms. I said no while the request was still small enough for people to call it rude. And when the scanner blinked red for the girl wearing my lanyard, I finally understood. Sometimes justice is not a dramatic punishment. Sometimes justice is a door that opens for the right person and stays closed for the one who came carrying a stolen name.